for the committee.
Is there a substitute?
Yes, sir, there is a substitute.
Is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Properly moved and seconded to adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 799
Thank you.
deals with gaming and the non-regulation thereof. Basically, the difference between the substitute and the bill that was originally presented, that it does not change the status of Charitable Gaming Board or its relationship with the Department of Agriculture or Consumer Services. It does not make any changes to the current regulation of fantasy contest operators. We took care of that last year, I believe. It also removes language vesting the board with authority to investigate illegal gambling and requiring the board to establish a memorandum of understanding with the state police, thereby putting the investigation where it should be, Mr. Chairman. In broad strokes, here's what the substitute does. It establishes a regulatory program for electronic gaming devices defined in the electronic and mechanical device that is to be used to play a game of skill. It requires the approval of electronic gaming devices by the board as games of skill and the registration of each device. The department will establish a program for periodic testing and inspection for all approved electronic gaming devices. The owner of a place of play, a defined term in the substitute, is required to register each electronic gaming device to have an approved charitable organization to receive a percentage of the gross receipts generated by the electronic gaming device. And regulatory program includes registration of suppliers and manufacturers of electronic gaming devices. The department is provided with an enforcement power similar to those granted for the regulation of fantasy contests. Mr. Chairman, should the bill pass your committee, I believe it needs to go to Senate Finance. Okay. Mr. Chairman, what this bill does is it actually would regulate a form of gaming that's currently being unregulated at this point in time. These electronic games are in mostly rest stops, truck stops and that type of place. But these games are considered a, quote, game of skill. And if you look at the handout that I gave you, basically they are intimating that these games of skill are legal via ruling by the Attorney General's office and ABC. That is actually a fallacious statement, Mr. Chairman. I asked, and this is what it looks like. Vanna is here with the turning the letters for you. Mr. Chairman, we have games that fall under charitable gaming now, bingo and other things that the Fraternal Order Police or other church groups do. And those games require that a certain percentage of the gross receipts go to charity. All this bill does is puts all these games under the same auspices, requiring the same benefits going to charity that currently are so under the Department of Gaming. Mr. Chairman, we have several people here to speak in support of the bill, if you so desire.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in support of the bill? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kevin Carroll. I'm the state president for Fraternal Order Police of Virginia. We support the legislation. Several of our lodges across the Commonwealth conduct bingo now, and these games that they've been put out here right now, they're completely unregulated. And this is just a foothold for other things to come in. We've had other illegal gambling operations, electronic games like this open up. We had one in Chesterfield County last year, and as soon as we found out about it, we went and shut them down. They were actually gambling that was taking place, and they were paying out cash at the end of the day. So we support the legislation to have this regulated and controlled the way it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Come. Welcome.
My name is Bonnie Atwood, and I'm speaking for the Virginia Moose Association. I'm also a member of the Women of the Moose. The Loyal Order of Moose supports this bill. They want to protect their ability to raise funds. They are an international organization of men and women dedicated to caring for young and old, bringing communities together and celebrating life. With a combined membership of 1 million members, the presence is felt in 1,500 communities all across the country. The Moose organization contributes between $75 and $100 million worth of community service. This is largely through the charitable gaming. In Virginia, we have 53 local Moose lodges with 35,000 individual men and women members and their families. These local fraternal lodges contribute volunteer time and millions of dollars to local and state charitable events and organizations supporting a variety of programs, such as the VCU Massey Cancer Center, which received $1 million, over $1 million from us, and to local police and local food banks, disabled veterans, Special Olympics, youth groups. They're having a Girl Scout event next week. All these legal charitable gaming supports all of this. We want to protect that. We want the games strictly regulated. We like this bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? Marty, come on up.
Sorry for the delay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. I'm Marty Williams, but I'm past president of the FOP, but today I'm going to take this off. I'm also vice chair of the Virginia Charitable Gaming Council. We formed this group last year because we know charitable gaming is in trouble. We're on life support playing bingo. We're just losing money hand over fist, and that can be easily documented by how much money is not going in the general fund anymore. When we heard about these machines coming into the area, alarm bells went off. Senator Cosgrove approached me one night. He said, there's a problem with these machines, and he wants to work on getting rid of them. And I said, we're on there 110%. We've got to stop them now. Because if we don't, they're a beast coming from all over the country to put these machines everywhere. And not only in truck stops, but they're in convenience stores. They're in bars and restaurants. They're everywhere. And once again, I don't have a problem with the machines if they're authorized by the Commonwealth of Virginia, like the electronic pull tabs are. We have 5 vendors in the state who have gone the proper route, going through the Department of Charitable Gaming, have paid a $10,000 fee to get their machines approved with a specified win-loss ratio to make certain that charities get their money and make certain the players aren't ripped off. They're accountable. They pay audit tax to the state. These machines, the Queen of Virginia machines, you've seen the pictures of them. There's no regulation at all. It's a wild, wild west. The state gets no money, nothing. And I dare say it's most likely a cash business where there's not a lot of accountability. And where's the IRS in this deal? If you went over $600 in any type of money, where's the 1099 coming from? I'm sure the restaurant's not putting it out there. I'm sure the truck stop's not putting it out there. The state's getting nothing. We ask you to please add accountability to this. If these machines can pass muster and go through the testing process, then so be it. But I don't think they can, because I've sat in front of them and I've played them. And they've been called a game of skill. Let me tell you what the skill is, how fast they take your money. That's the skill. And they do it very, very quickly. So I know there's been a lot of controversy about ABC and the AG's office and all that, but let's put that aside for a minute. These machines are dangerous. They're dangerous to everybody. There's no regulation of what the age is going to be when they're going to be played. They're just a total travesty for charities especially. Now, we also understand that a lot of the restaurants, et cetera, are afraid of losing the revenue they're getting from these things, because there's almost 600-700 of these out there, and they come in every day. And we understand that. We say simply, okay, if you want to put these machines in your establishment, then get the licensed and approved machines in there. But let the charity help you with that. Because if you've got a sponsorship of charity, the charity's going to make sure, number one, the state gets their portion through the audit and administrative fee. Number two, the IRS is satisfied. And number three, they're permitted. And just think about walking into AJ Gators and see 4 or 5 of these machines there, sponsored by Massey Cancer Center, sponsored by Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters, sponsored by Habitat for Humanity. It's a process. The first step is looking through 799, and please, let's get this ball rolling to stop these machines now, because without them, we're in trouble.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks so much.
Mr. Chairman. down here. A question for Mr. Williams.
Yes,
Not Sheriff Williams today.
it's okay.
I had two questions for him and one question for council. Maybe council can work on this while I'm asking my question, but I'd like to see whatever the existing definition of game of skill is. I can't find the Attorney General's opinion. I'm not clear whether we're changing it by statute or what, but if you have some source material I could look at, that'd be useful. For the gentleman speaking, what basis do you have, or what basis do you have to say that it's these machines that are causing bingo's decline and not something else, number one? Number two, I'm not clear what part of this bill fixes your problem, and I'm curious if you could direct me to that. Maybe Senator Cosgrove could also.
One of the bases is the fact they're usually opening up right beside bingo halls. That's where they're putting them at. And they're just like the the sweepstakes. Sweepstakes are now disguised as vapor shops, jewelry stores, things along that line. Because, believe me, I'm on the Planning Commission in Chesapeake. We've dealt with them really, really severely through zoning because, unfortunately, they always find a way around everything that the sweepstakes do. These machines are the same way. They're finding around everything. And as far as the AG's opinion, I don't think you're going to find one except for the fact that he agrees that ABC can make an opinion. That's my understanding. I haven't seen that either, sir. I've looked. But bingo this is the worst year ever for bingo in the Commonwealth of Virginia. 2017 was. Worst year ever. Attendance is down. And in interviewing the players that come into the four halls the FOP involves is because they say, we have other places to go now. And they name places like this that they go. They go to the truck stops. They go to the restaurants that have these machines. So it's a problem which is beginning, and it's never going to end until we can stop it. And that's what we're asking you to do.
Mr. Chairman.
It's horrible.
And again, if you could just show me what in this bill fixes your problem. I mean, I see this sets up a board and it defines a game of skill and it says you have to get a machine approved before you can use it and all that, but I'm not clear what in this bill would get rid of these machines you're
Yes,
unhappy
sir. I'm
about.
going to leave that to the legal guys, if that's okay, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we're not establishing a new board. We're just basically putting all of the games, whether the games of skill, games of chance, under charitable gaming. All right, so basically we're not creating a new board. I had intended to do that, but the cost I thought probably would spell a different outcome for the bill. What we have is there's not a direct competition between bingo and this electronic gaming or whatever. I mean, basically, the big difference is that those games that are played by the Moose Lodge, by the FOP, by religious charities, those monies go to specific well-intentioned groups, such as, let's look at just FOP Lodge number 9 in Chesapeake. Those funds go to the Special Olympics, Shop with a Cop, Fallen Officers Survivor Funds, and things like that. Each one of these organizations has their own charity that they support and sustain through this gaming.
Let's see if there's any opposition to the bill.
You bet.
Welcome.
Eddie Galiff, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist, and I appreciate Senator Cosgrove talking to me prior about this bill. My problem is this is a huge, all of a sudden change, and I think Senator DeSteph made a good point in one other committee of this is a lot to digest in this short period of time. But in my concern is if we have illegal gambling going on, arrest the people, close up the institutions, use the police to do what they need to do. That's my concern, and I feel like that's the better solution than this particular attempt to fix it. That's just my take on it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joe Wertz, Virginia Restaurant Lodging and Travel Association. We respect and understand the intent of this bill, but we do have some concerns with the broadness of it, specifically electronic gaming devices. We feel that might have a bit of a substantial impact on some of our members of our industry, such as the Dave & Buster's and Chuck E. Cheese's, and their ability to operate. So, thank you.
Have you looked at the substitute?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. David Halleck on behalf of Pace-O-Matic, and I would just like to start by saying, my mom plays bingo, and I'm very sympathetic, with the plight of the charitable organizations and the bingo groups. But I think their problem is more a generational issue than it is about the diversity of the machines and the options that are out there today. Because as you heard from the proponents, if these machines are illegal, there are a lot of options out there. Our state police, our local police, our Commonwealth's attorneys, they shut down illegal gaming operations every single day across the Commonwealth. That seems to be working well. Those operations work well, and they're in the hands of the law enforcement officials, which is where they should be, not in the hands of a board of volunteer, citizen member, political appointees from the governor of the Commonwealth. That's not an appropriate place to put the law enforcement powers. If there are games that are illegal out there, they have a way to shut them down. We just got the substitute, which is very different, obviously, than the introduced bill. I'm not sure there's 5 or 6 lines that are the same between the substitute and the introduced bill, but it does give broad powers to this unelected governor-appointed board for the citizen board to be able to regulate a whole new industry in a way that I'm not sure they have the expertise or the ability as volunteers to do that going forward. It sets up new fees. It sets up a special fund to be able to do that going forward. And it doesn't set out anything. There's a lot of talk from the proponents about the charities. It doesn't set out anything about what the charities get under this. The charities could get zero under this bill as it's drafted in front of you today on that front. There is also, very broad reach, as the previous speaker mentioned. If you look at the definition of electronic gaming device and a game of skill, every game at your Chuck E. Cheese, your State Fair, your Dave & Buster's, your arcade on the Virginia Beach waterfront, your pinball machines in a restaurant, you're playing Pac-Man at the local pizza parlor, becomes a game of skill when you have to interact with the game and you're paying money in order to do that. So it would capture, the way it's drafted now, it would capture all of those, would have to become licensed and regulated. Any entity that had those games or operated those games would have to do that. So I think this is a bill that's not ready for prime time, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure it's even ready for daytime yet, but it would use a little work over the convening year, and I think that there could be some opportunities there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Janis on behalf of the Family Foundation speaking against the bill. So we've spoken with Senator Cosgrove about his purpose and intent in introducing the legislation, and we feel that his intent in introducing the bill is quite laudable, to go after the illegal gaming that's going on in Virginia today, to create an enforcement regimen that would make it easier, and along with funding for that enforcement mechanism, to go after and to deter and to stop the illegal gaming. Regrettably, this substitute goes well beyond simply going after the illegal gaming, and it really represents a colossal expansion of legal gaming in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you look at what it's doing today, starting at line number 35, the charitable organization that this would be linked to would have to be organized under Section 509A of the Internal Revenue Code. Today, charities in Virginia that avail themselves of the authority to engage in charitable gaming have to be organized under a 501c3. So I'm not really sure why you draw it to that code section rather than 501c3, but it's a different character of charity that you're now focusing on as being the recipient, okay? When you look at the definition, the novel definition here of electronic gaming device, it says that this is a device that's used to play a game of skill at line 45. But when you go to line number 67, implicit in that is that these electronic gaming devices will include the capacity to provide full automatic daubing, as numbers are called. That's bingo you're talking about there, okay? So what you're doing now, most importantly, is lines 61 to 64 would remove the requirement that the charitable gaming take place at the site of the charity, so that there'd be some nexus between the charity and the gaming that was supposed to be supporting the operations of the charity. And you're really expanding it into every club, potentially every club, establishment, or restaurant that applies for and qualifies for this certification, for this licensure. It was mentioned by an earlier witness, there's no percentage requirement that'll be determined at some point in the future of the percentage that has to go to this charity. So what you're doing is, I mean, this is a bigger expansion. It's almost as big of an expansion as the lottery, in the sense that like the lottery where you can buy lottery tickets in lots of places, in lots of convenience stores, and now online. This would remove the nexus between the charitable gaming and the site of the charitable gaming and the charity, and put it in potentially every restaurant, every club, every establishment, which is a novel definition as well, but it's somebody that serves alcohol. And we see it as a colossal expansion. Previous witness said, wouldn't it be great to see these machines with a sign on them that says Children's Hospital of King's Daughters or Massey Cancer Center? And that's probably a laudable goal, but I don't know how much of that money is going to end up going to the Children's Hospital for the King's Daughters, or how much of that money is going to go to the Massey Cancer Center, and how much of it's going to end up in the hands of out-of-state for-profit gaming interests who are using the charities as the pretense for a colossal expansion to where, when, and how you can gamble in the Commonwealth of Virginia. For these reasons and for the reasons stated by the other witnesses in opposition, we respectfully request that you not pass this bill.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
You want to wrap that up?
Yeah, I think so. First off, let me correct a couple of things that were set up here. This does not grant the board law enforcement privileges. That goes through the state police as well defined in the bill. Secondly, it was stated that, basically this is a colossal, mentioned 4 or 5 times, colossal expansion. It's not. What happens now, Mr. Chairman, if nothing happens with this, these games will proliferate on their own because they're already in restaurants now. If, basically we say, all right, we're going to look at it for another year. They did that in Ohio, and over that year, they saw another 7,000 or 8,000 of these machines proliferate. And I'd actually be willing to bet that there's probably somebody that has a letter into the ABC or the AG's office asking for a letter, just like they got, from this one. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is something that needs to be taken care of. We're just looking to get all this gaming on a level playing field, so that everybody's playing by the same rules, and so that charities thrive. If we don't do this, remember, one of the witnesses was right. Basically, charities will get nothing, zero, just like they're getting now. And, we've put gaming, so it benefits charities in the past. Lottery benefits the education fund. Mr. Chairman, this bill's time is now, and I hope it'll be the pleasure of the committee to pass the bill.
All right, if there is a motion to approve, it will have to go to finance.
Absolutely.
So is there a motion? Committee acts on motions.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that the bill be continued in committee. I think there's a number of issues that have been expressed that I'm not sure are quite worked out. And I'd like to see the bill remain in committee.
Your motion is to carry it over to 2019. Second. Is that, I want to clarify that was your motion. Okay, and there was properly seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, before you take the vote, if that vote indeed does pass, I requested a letter from the chair, go to gaming, to find out how many more of these machines proliferated between now and next year.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds reasonable. Okay. All right, no further discussion. Are you ready to vote? Right. Well, let's see. Was that to continue to 19? Okay, record your votes. The vote to carry it over is 11-3.
All right.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 424, which will be the second bill you've heard on the Virginia Gaming Commission, but hopefully this one will be a little bit simpler and we'll get a better reception. Basically, the upshot of this bill is to reorganize the Virginia and establish the Virginia Charitable Gaming Commission, in which the commission would have control of charitable gaming in the Commonwealth. And it would do, among other things, regulate bingo, fantasy, and it would have the budget to hire its own staff, set its own budget. It would be fully self-funded and fully self-functioning, somewhat akin to DGIF, where it would be completely what we call a Callahan Act, self-funded and not reliant on general fund. It would have 11 members, which are laid out within the body of the bill, and it would establish a charitable gaming fund. And unlike the previous bill you heard and rejected, I'm not trying to fight the battle of changing the rules on charitable gaming with this bill. I would like to see them expanded someday, but that's not what this bill is about. This bill is really putting in place a structure. So if and when the General Assembly in its infinite wisdom does choose to perhaps move out in a different path on charitable gaming, that we would have, again, a self-policing body to watch over it. It would still rely on the state police to for any criminal powers, while it would have subpoenas and some limited administrative powers. It itself would not initiate criminal investigations, but rather would refer those to the state police. So I've got some very excellent backup speakers, and I would defer to them before I have to get too deep into the weeds.
Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Matt Bentke with the Virginia Charitable Bingo Association. We appreciate Senator Peterson sponsoring this bill. The two main things that it really does is that it brings back all the money that the charities are paying in as fees to the Commonwealth. Right now, half of the money we pay as fees goes into the general fund. What we're saying is we'd like to have those funds back to have more inspectors. We need more inspectors out there looking at these illegal games. And we also want to use that money to have more state police out to enforce what we're doing. But I also have our legislative director, Mr. Chuck Lesson, is here to talk about it as well.
Chuck. Thanks. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm
Welcome.
Chuck Lesson. Thank you. I am the legislative director for the Virginia Charitable Bingo Association. I'm also currently serving on the state board for charitable gaming. As Matt said, this bill does a number of things. I would like to say, in a more general way, that in 15 years of bringing gaming bills, this bill has the potential to do more good for our state charities than any other bill that we've ever brought. Essentially, it establishes a commission like the Horse Race Commission. Some may know that that body brings in maybe $70 million a year. Charitable gaming brings in almost $700 million a year. The vast majority of that goes back out to our patrons in prizes, but it is a big industry, and each year the Commonwealth decides to peel off a little more and a little more of our fees, and our industry goes down and down and down. So what this bill does, it will reverse that. It establishes a commission of 11 members. Right now, the 11 members we have serving on the Charitable Gaming Board, out of those 11, 4 of those folks come from charities that have bingo licenses. One comes from law enforcement, and another comes from landlords and supplier. We want to sort of reverse that, and we would like 8 of the members to come from charities that have licenses to conduct bingo. Experts in the field who've been doing this for years and years, and who can really have significant input into our board and the direction of gaming. We certainly would like this new commission and its board to have the power to set its own budget and hire our staff. We'd like to establish this fund as a special fund that can only be used for the administering and enforcing of charitable gaming laws and regulations and fantasy contests as it currently exists. We'd like to be able to educate our charitable organizations and players and promote charitable gaming. We'd like to require that the commission will revise its fees levied by it for issuing gaming permits and supplier registration or renewal thereof, so that the fees are sufficient to cover our expenses but not excessive, again, a Callahan Act type agency. One of the things in the bill that makes it unique, we heard from the previous bill, there is a proliferation of illegal games in Virginia, and to that we can all agree. One of the things this bill will do, if we are able to maintain possession of all of the fees that we pay in as charities, we'd like to use a small amount of that to contract with state police, as it were, to have 2 full-time state police investigators that will dedicate their time to shutting down all of the illegal gaming in Virginia. One of the things our organization does, we chase like whack-a-mole every year all around the state, meeting with police departments, chiefs, and Commonwealth's attorneys, all of whom tell us the same thing. We know this illegal activity is happening, but we're prioritizing and we can't get to it. If we're able to keep our own funds and contract with state police, we will have 2 full-time folks that we are paying for as the charities, and they can go out and keep a watchful eye on those that are gaming illegally and essentially competing with the charities that have the legal privilege to do this and are being robbed essentially of our charitable profits. So we've spoken to a few people on Senate Finance. We feel like we've had some very good opening discussions, and we ask that you re-refer this bill to Senate Finance.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I had a constituent who came down at particular issues.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and fellow senators. My name is Frank Wojciech, and I'm retired. I worked 35 years for our defense industry in contractual and financial matters. I began playing this fantasy sports. I support the bill, and my comments pertain to the section on regulating fantasy bill license fees. As I said, I played small business season-long games since the mid-1990s, and I continue to do so, hobby and recreational, to take my mind off my work. There is a fee of $50,000 included in the legislation. The fee is one size fits all. It's irrespective of the number of players in the game and irrespective of the revenue raised. This, unfortunately, has caused the small business operators to leave the marketplace because you simply can't afford trying to amortize $50,000 over a playing base of 125 people, the normal amount for the small operators and the hundreds of thousands who play the daily fantasy games. So I'm proposing that amendment be offered that appears right now. We want to amend section 59.1 with the words that the initial fee for an application for registration in accordance with this act shall be $50,000. Thereafter, the fee for an application for registrations shall be set by the commissioner, except that the small fantasy contest operator shall pay an application fee of $100,000 under this act until they exceed the $1,500 player threshold in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
This legislation is Senator Peterson's legislation, so I have to turn to him whether you want to amend your bill.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sort of play this by ear. If the committee advances this, I'm going to work with my constituent on either doing a floor amendment or perhaps taking this up on the House side. I need to sort of examine this. I do think it's important, though, once we set up this commission, that these issues such as fantasy and the thresholds, that would be something appropriate. But I think the details of this is something I'll probably catch at another point.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 424? If there is a motion to pass, it would be to pass and re-refer to finance. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded, the bill be reported and re-referred to finance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, that bill is re-referred to finance. Senator Lucas.